In Book 1, Cicero states that every subject that contains a controversy, to be resolved in debate, involves a question about a fact, a definition, the nature of an act, or about legal processes. These question types are called issues. When a dispute is about a fact, the issue is called conjectural. When the issue is about a definition, the issue is called definitional. When the nature of the act is the controversy that must be decided on, the issue is called qualitative. Finally, when the controversy concerns whether or not the correct medium for decision was pursued, the issue is called translative. For my case, the case of the two travelers, which Cicero describes in Book 2, the issue is conjectural. Cicero describes the case. One day, a man went on a business trip. While on the highway, the man who we'll call Jack, met another man, Mike. Jack was a wealthy man, and had on his person a decent amount of money. After meeting, the two men quickly became friends, and spent the whole day together. The same night, the two men slept in the same hotel room. The innkeeper, who'd set the two up with a room, saw that Jack had a lot of money, and in the middle of the night, when Jack and Mike were both asleep, took Mike's sword, and killed Jack with it. He replaced the sword into Mike's sheath and went about to hide the money. Mike woke up the next day and tried to wake Jack, but couldn't. Assuming he was just asleep, he went on and left the hotel. As Mike left, the innkeeper raised cries of murder and Mike was arrested for killing Jack. In this case, the question is, did Mike commit murder? That is, the point for the judge to decide on, is the fact of Mike murdering Jack. This is a conjectural issue. A conjectural issue is called conjectural because the plea is supported by conjectures, or inferences. In our case, both the defense's plea that Mike did not commit murder, and the prosecution's assertion that Mike did commit it, are supported by inference. Since we have no recording of the actual crime to see who really did it. Cicero states in Book 2, Section 16 that every inference is based on arguments from the cause of the action, from the character of the person involved, and from the nature of the act. Cicero explains that an action can be either impulsive or premeditated. An impulsive action is one done by a person without thinking about it. This type of action is committed because of some emotional state. A premeditated action is done carefully and its execution and consequences are thought out. This type of action is done to take advantage of some opportunity or to avoid some disadvantage. In Cicero's case of the two travelers, I argue that the suspect's action can be interpreted as impulsive, but that with the introduction of new evidence, the case is more properly interpreted as a premeditated attack. To argue for the suspect's conviction, I present both of these interpretations as possible and leave it to the auditors to decide whether the suspect's actions were wrong or not. In this way, I transfer their focus from being on the fact of the murder, to the nature of the murder. In this case, to argue the action's impulsive attribute, I dilate upon the passion of the suspect's feeling of betrayal for his wife. Attempting to communicate that the prospect of him murdering the victim is not unbelievable. To present the action's deliberative nature, I show that the suspect was interested in taking the advantage of redeeming his bad feeling after discovering his wife's infidelity. In the end, I bring to the attention of the auditors the defendant's denial of the murder, even in the existence of considerable evidence of his guilt. I take this denial and make it a symptom of the victim's bad character, and make this bad character a focal point for the auditors as they make a decision on the conviction. Speech. I present to you evidence that has been found by the detectives working this case. It has been found that the man who was killed was involved in an affair with the defendant's wife. Here are the letters from the defendant's wife to the victim that the detectives have extracted from their home. They are passionate letters filled with her yearning for a new love and escape from her marriage. One reads, "I love you so much, I can't wait to leave him to be with you. From this new evidence, we see the news of the slain's death with new insight. An insight into what this murder really was. An act of rage. The defendant acted in passion to avenge his lost love. Recognizing his wife's unfaithfulness drove him to a fit of madness, and he plotted to murder her lover and succeeded in the deed. In their further research, detectives have found that a few of the letters indicated that the victim wanted to break off the affair. One of his letters to her reads, "I can't ask you to leave your husband. It wouldn't be good for him, for me, or for you. We should stop." From this we can see that the victim did not even wish to continue the affair and would possibly be alive today had the letters not been discovered. Some of you may sympathize with the assailant. You may think, if I was placed in a similar situation, I can't say that I wouldn't commit the same act. I may also, reluctantly agree with this sentiment. My reluctance is for the nerve of the defendant to deny his actions. Sure, he may be justified in the opinion of a jury in committing the act. This jury may interpret his act as impulsive, and thus redeemable. But to wholly deny the action of taking this man's life away is completely deplorable. The motive and process of the defendant is obvious. After discovering the affair between the victim and his wife, the man sought information about his target like a sleuth in the night. Tracked him down. Spotted him while the man was on a business trip. And slayed him. Only to leave the scene as if nothing happened. In fact, the man has come into this courthouse as if nothing happened as well. To kill the man for laying with your wife is one thing, but to deny it completely is another thing entirely, and says much of this man's character. The victim even recognized that what he was doing was wrong, and made an effort to stop his adultery with the defendant's wife. Though he empathized with the defendant's feelings, the defendant acted as judge and jury and executed the victim. How lucky we are that such an impulsive force does not govern our own lives. If we act in error, should we also be disproportionately attacked for our bad judgment? The defendant could have acted with more prudence and instead of murdering the victim, could have simply left his wife. But he wanted more. Let it be noted among the jurors this. Consideration of the defendant's passion in an act of revenge is reasonable, but how can his actions be considered just and then acquitted if he denied the dastardly act that he has committed? Imprudence, passion, and rage are one thing, but the act of perjury in a case so grave is another thing entirely. His denial speaks of his character, and I say that we should not let the slain die in vain. Convict this man.